What's going on, y'all? This is Tim DeGrassa here. I wanted to share with y'all my review on the Kaza Deluxe leather case for the X-Pro3. When you first pick up this case with the camera, you can just immediately tell that it is just phenomenal, right? It fits really well. There are no gaps or anything of that nature, and you can tell that whoever built this case really put some time and effort into it. Everything from the color of the leather to the stitching is just crafted beautifully. This version of the case that I have here is the one with the SD access, which just means that you can access the SD cards as well as charge the device and access the remote port while the case is on. I will say though that there are two things that this case kind of, affects a little bit for me in terms of user experience. And the first is whenever I'm charging with the USB-C cable, this door is just a little bit funky because it cannot fully open with this tiny piece of the case right here. Now, if you're able to just finagle it and get it to sit straight, then you'll be all set, and it's not really that big of a deal. Now, the other thing that is a little bit more of a problem for me is where this button is located, and that is because when you go to pick up the camera, right, it's like you have to kind of think about it for a second. When I go to grab it, I have to kind of imagine that my two fingers are going above this button so that my middle finger is not just, sticking on the button there, right? I always have to adjust and re-hold the camera or reset my fingers so that, the button is not intruding or impeding on my shooting experience. Now, once you get used to that and, a little bit of muscle memory kicks in, I do not foresee that being a really big deal, especially when you have constant access to the SD cards and you have constant access to charging the device on the go. Those are all just small things in comparison to just, like I said, how great this case really is. Now, the great question, can you flip the screen down? Yes, you can. You can flip it down 180 degrees, and for me, that's perfectly fine because I'm not shooting, overlay shots like this too much. If I want to, then I'm using a different camera. And any case that leaves this open for 180 degrees is obviously going to expose the hinge of the camera so that if you were to drop the case, right, or the device itself, you're probably gonna hit that hinge and break the camera. And that's just not something I'm willing to deal with. So like I said, there's two versions of this case, and the other is the one without the SD access or the charging port access. And let's just go ahead and take a look at that one now by undoing this screw with a dime. So you just unscrew really quickly. Shouldn't take too long at all. And mind you, this is the only screw that's holding the case into the camera. And what's great about this screw is you can still, put a quick release plate on it and still mount this camera with the case to a tripod. So then you'll undo the little straps on the sides, which also kind of act as holders, but they're not as official in terms of holding the case to the camera as this 1/4-inch screw. So here's the other version. You just take the case and you just slide it right on. Like I said, everything has perfect cutouts. And you just put the buttons back in. And then you add the screw and make sure everything is nice and tight. What you want to do sometimes is just push the case a little bit towards the back side so that the screw goes in perfectly, because sometimes you don't want to put it in crooked or anything of that nature. You can use your fingernail to screw it in, but I like to use a dime to get it nice and tight. Now, this case right off the bat is the one that I'm going to be rocking on a daily, and that's because it just offers a much better ergonomic experience. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at this button here, it's right on the side of the camera and not pushed out to the front. So when you hold this camera, you don't even have to think about it. You just pick up the camera with the case and you just, go and you start shooting. Compare that to the other one. I really really just tried to use my pinky to button up this case. All right, now, like I said, you compare it to the other version. The buttons on the side, this button is more towards the front, right? So like I said, when you're holding this version of the case, you don't have to think about it, right? Your fingers are not being impeded by anything, and this button is sitting right on the inside of your hand. So you can easily shoot and pick it up. This one, on the other hand, like I said, you have to do something like this, right? And hold the camera out. And that just, can be a little uncomfortable, but still an overall nice case. So you just kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. Do you want to have access to your charging port and your SD cards all the time? Or do you want a better shooting experience, right? Where you're maybe, going on a long trip and you just want to transfer photos to your iPhone or anything of that nature and still, have a well-protected device. Then I would definitely go for the version without the SD access. Like I said, if I do need to transfer my photos to Photoshop or Lightroom or Capture One or anything of that nature, then I'll just take the case off, right? And I'll utilize the camera like that. But for the most of the time, I'm shooting, just real quick shots and I'm adding them to my iPhone, and I don't necessarily need that. I definitely just took a shot. But anyway, like I said, both cases are built exceptionally well, and it just really depends on what kind of shooter you are. Are you the one who's always accessing the ports, or are you the one who, are taking photos on the go and you're just pushing your photos straight to your iPhone or your tablet or something like that? For me, I'm gonna be rocking with this one because, like I said, the shooting experience and the ergonomics for me are just that much better.